Welcome to this part of our tutorial. Today we are going to look at tables, HTML tables. Remember we've done about 5 videos or more on HTML, which we've covered links, we've covered lists, we've covered HTML attribute attacks and headings and all that. So today we want to look at lists. Let's quickly look at that. So I'm going to create a new file. Okay, I am using a code. I told you we're going to use about 200 applications. So one of them is this. So I'll just call this tables.html. Don't forget, all HTML files have .html or .htm extension. So I'll do that, and I should save this. Sorry, that's not what I actually want to do. I want to save these to my, where are you? Okay, sorry, I actually made a mistake. Let's read that file here. We'll call it tables.html. Okay, so I'll now load my tables. Where is it? It's okay on top. So let me close this. Now what I have to do is to define my doc type. Of course, that should be the first thing you should think of. I'm using HTML5, so I do that. Now you're not going to look at this in detail, but let me just specify this. I want to use a viewport. Okay, and then the content should be width. I'll explain this later on, but not in today's tutorial. So the width should be the device width. And the initial scale should be equal to 1. Okay, let's just leave that there. And the title of my document is tables. Okay, what else do we need? Now let's just go straight to the point. To define an HTML table, a table is just it helps you to collect data and then to structure the data, structure them. Like everyday life, we have tables where you have to prepare tables with headings and sometimes without headings. You have to structure data well. So you can also do that with HTML. To get an HTML table, all you need is the table. It's the table attribute. It's called the table tag. And it has a border, which these border properties getting deprecated. That is, it is almost being removed. It will soon be removed, and will not be recognized again in HTML. So I would not love to use this, but I'll use that, and then you'll see how it goes. I'll change the value, and then I'll use CSS to style it. The recommendation now is that we should use CSS because this is deprecated. Okay, now the table tag here defines the table from here to here. So that's the table. And then the next thing you have to do is, if your table has headers, you have to define your table headers with a th tag, th for table head. So I'll define that. So I want my table to have a name and maybe which other tag again, a name and maybe an address, email. Okay, so that takes care of the head of my table. It's saying there's an error. Where's the error from? Unexpected table set start tag. Oh, that's not an error anyway. That's not an error. Okay. Now the next thing is to define the body of my table, but before that, let's just run this and see how it goes. Tables.html. Of course, you see what's happening here. So that's the head of my table, and you see the border. We'll talk about the border later on. So let's define the body of the table. So to do that, you use the tr for table row. So the table is made up of rows and columns, right? Okay, so I get a table row. So the rows should contain information. I should contain columns. So you use TD for table data. The table data holds the data of each of the columns. I have two columns here, the name and the email column. So I'll use just two of these. And let's say the first name is Morris, and then the email address is, I use another TD to hold it. Email address should be Morris Oscar. Okay, add that. So that's the first data I have, first table row. So I can define another one. Sorry, table row. Define another. I don't need a class yet. And let's call this one Oscar. And Oscar has email of the email of Oscar is Oscar Johnson. Oscar Johnson 22 gmail.com. Okay. So if I view this, it should give me what I'm looking for, you see. So this is the head of our table, and these are the information. Why is this one bold? Let's go back and check what's happening. Oh, I used table head here. Sorry, that was a typing error. It's supposed to be TD for table data, and that's where we have the error. TD for table data, not table head. Okay, so that should be gone now. Okay, so let's look at the results briefly before we continue. Okay, you see it's not bold again. So the headers by default, every browser makes the heading of a table bold and centered aligned. So you see it's center aligned and it's bold. So that defines the header, and the border we define is why you see this in boxes, right? So most times, let's remove this border property, make it 0. Then we'll see what happens to our table, how it looks like this time around. Okay, so the border property has been set to 0, and you see there are no borders around. It looks somehow cleaner, it's kind of cleaner. Well, like I said, the border property, the border attribute is deprecated, meaning it will soon be removed from the list of keywords and tags and attributes in HTML. So it's better to do this using CSS. So I'll show you a bit of that, but before we go, remember to define the table heading, you have to use the table head. And then to define the body of the table, you have to use a table row. Yeah, the table row. Yeah, and then the row will define the row, and of course each row is made up of columns, right? A row is divided into columns. So since we have two headings, it only shows that we should have two columns, and then you define the columns using TD, table data. Okay. Now sometimes you might have a table and you want maybe the data, a particular column, to span multiple columns. You want data to span multiple columns. What you do there is to do that, you have to use what we call the row span, a column span. So let me do something here. I'm going to define a new table row. There's a new table row. It should have two table data, right? Two table data. But I'm going to use just one table data, and I'll make it span the two columns we have. So, and I'll come here to the table column and I'll say column span. Sorry, that's not what I want to type. Column span. Okay, so you see column span, I'll make it 2, meaning it should span 2 columns. And then I can write, so let me just write here, this spans 2 columns. Okay, so let's run this and see how it goes. Of course, you see what's happening? It's spanning 2 columns. Let me put the border back so that we see that very well. Let's bring the border in again. Okay. You see, it's spanning 2 columns. So that's how to span two columns. So instead of having two columns, you just use one to span that. Okay, now what if you want to span rows? How do you do that? So to do that, you define the table this, and then you say that there should exist a certain table data that spans a specific number of rows. Row span should be 2. Okay, so let's say this one is this row spans, okay, this cell spans 2 columns, or 2 rows, sorry. Now, by the way, what we defined, the columns, they're actually called cells most times. So you say a table cell, and all that, cell references and all that. Okay, this one spans 2 columns. So I'll define this, and I'll define another table data. Okay, this one, this by default should hold a name. So the first row should hold a name, but I'm making it span 2 columns. So I'll define that, and then I'll define the email. Just write something, any email that comes to my mind, gmail.com. Okay, and now I'll define another table row. Just watch out what happens here. I have 2 rows here, right? 2 columns here, but in the next one I'm going to define, I'll have just 1 column, because the first one here will span 2. So I'll come here and I'll define table data, and then I'll just write the email. Let's say scammers, anything. Okay. Wow, that's serious. Sorry for that. Let's just continue with what you're doing. Okay, so let's just run this and see how the result looks like. Okay, so that's what I was saying. Now this takes the place of 2 columns. So instead of splitting into 2, it spans 2 rows, right? And while we still have their normal values, see? So that's what I was saying. So instead of writing another this thing here, I just have one here and here, but this one I make sure it spans 2. So the row span is used to that's how to use it, to span and to join cells together. Like I said, each table data is called a cell, and a cell is cells belong to rows and all that. They have their own specific rows which they have which the reference, and a particular column which the reference. Another thing I want us to look at briefly is tables that have captions. Most times you want your table to have a caption. So in order to do that, you just use the caption. Sorry, not figure caption, just normal caption. Okay, so the caption tag, and the caption, just give the account. You say this is list of or names of, let's say, of employees. Okay, just that. Then let's look at what happens. Okay, it's coming. Sorry for the time it's taking to process. A lot of things on my phone. Okay, now you see the caption is there. So a table now has a caption on top, name of employees. That's used to uniquely identify this table. Okay, so that is that. Okay, like I was saying, that the border is getting deprecated. So let's take this out. Now we want to define a style. It says a style. So I'm coming to the end, and I say style. Okay, just allow that there. So what I'm gonna do is, for each table data, right, and for table heads and for okay. I don't. Okay, let's just define that too. For every table, table, head, and table data and table head. I want them to have a padding, a border property. I'm using the shorthand border property. So the shorthand says we should define the thickness of the border, the type of border, solid, dotted, or all that, and then the color. So I'm going to say black. So with this, I have defined the border property. And notice I've removed the border here, so we shouldn't have any border, but having defined here, the border should come back. So let's see how that goes. Oh, it's coming. So you see the borders are back now. They are back. Okay. Now, most times for me, that styling, it's dirty. I don't like it. What I like is I make I wouldn't want to define a border for all my tables. Maybe I want to make it open. So the preferred style which I like is to make the table a table head and a table data. Okay, I'll even take, instead of taking table data, I take table row. So I say the rows, the main table itself, and the head. Now, what do I want? Okay, let's use table data, not table head. What do I want to do? I get a border property, but this time around, not for the entire border. I just take the border bottom. Okay, so the border bottom only. And I want my table head to, I don't want it to be center aligned. I want it to be left aligned. So I use text align and I say left. So I want it to be left aligned. Okay. Let's just look at how that will look like. It's coming up. It's coming. Okay, so that's what I actually said. See, you only have the lines below, so we don't have that again. Okay, so the duplicate line below is because I also defined this. So I want to remove for the table and just define for the other ones. So that we want. Oh, sorry, my phone is gone. Okay, so if I remove the definition for table, I should have okay, see, there's no duplicate line again below. Okay, so that's how it is defined. Now, sometimes you see tables that are, how do we call it? That banded rows. Okay, so if I have to do that, so let's define data for banded rows, and I say table and child for the table row. I need child, and I'm looking for the odd ones. Okay, so for every end child of the table row, let's give it a background color of maybe, let's say, gray. Right, let me use something that will be conspicuous, something you easily see what's actually happening. I will say green. And then for the table row, the end child, and this time around I need the even end child. Okay, so we say that the background color should be blue. They're not actually good colors, but I just want to see what is actually happening or what will happen. So let's view this. It should be up very soon. Oh, you see what's happening? So the odd rows are green and the even rows are blue. So this is the idea of the so-called banded rows. So use a color that makes your table beautiful, but I just wanted you to see what's happening. So let's see. That's how to do the banded row stuff. Okay, I think that should be enough for now. I don't think there's any other thing which I've not done. Okay, I've taken care of the styling, the border, the ends, the banded, the edge, and all that. Okay, so that's all for tables. That's how to define the table. You can also make it responsive. Okay, yeah, you can. Let's just look at that too. I would say the table row. Each time someone hovers over any table row, that the color should change. Background color. This time around, I would say it should be red. Like I said, there are not actually colors I want to use. I just want to show you what's actually happening. So anytime you hover over any particular row, the entire row should become red. But let's see if it's actually working. And note I'm using a phone, so I hover over this. See what's happening? So any row you hover over becomes red. Wow. So that's how to do that. Thank you very much for watching the tutorial. Like I said, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask your questions and we'll do well to answer them. Thank you very much. See you some other time.